Well, hello, and I am so thrilled to introduce you today to Laura Ericson, former GowerCrowd team member and now international Jetsetter, providing guided vacations and tours around the world to those traveling solo. Hi, I'm Adam Gower, and this is the second of two holiday specials this year. And today's episode is dedicated to Solly Dunkelman, gentleman and scholar, in appreciation of his impeccable taste in podcast listening. Hello, Solly. Now, Laura worked for GowerCrowd and became an integral member of our team until her real passion to build her own travel business took hold. She left GowerCrowd and embarked on establishing herself as a solo entrepreneur under 2 years ago. And you will learn today what gumption and drive and a willingness to overcome all obstacles and a willingness to take a few risks, what they can do to helping you achieve your dreams if you but put your mind to it. Solly, this episode is for you and for all of your friends, because what you're going to learn is that anything in life is possible if you put your mind to it and are willing to go out there, work hard, not take no for an answer, and are willing to take some risks to achieve your dreams. To find out more about Laura and her amazing business, go to the podcast page at GowerCrowd.com. Of course, as I always remind you, please go ahead and subscribe to the GowerCrowd newsletter there at the top of the page. It's totally free, and we cover the world of real estate, crowdfunding and syndication every week with our weekly newsletter. You get information and resources that you can actually use there at GowerCrowd.com. All right, wishing you a happy holiday and a healthy and successful 2023. Here she is, Laura Ericson, and the GowerCrowd Podcast 2022 Holiday Special. Laura, it's so fabulous to see you. Oh my goodness. Well, I don't know where to start, actually, other than all I can tell is since you abandoned ship, you abandoned the GowerCrowd ship, all I've noticed is an explosive growth in the amazing business that you've got. It looks wonderful, and I want to hear all about it. So why don't you, first of all, just tell me your story, because when we met, you were doing something completely different. Then you helped us. You were amazing. You transitioned us so wonderfully and professionally. And then you kind of disappeared for a little bit. And all I see now on Facebook is the most amazing things. So start off, Laura, tell us your story. Bring us up to date on what you're doing now, and then I'll ask you all the rest of the questions.
Sure. Yeah. Well, so I worked in higher education for 14 years. And I think it was like 2019, pre-pandemic, that I had found you, Adam, and I was looking to potentially dip my toes in the world of working remotely pre-COVID. So started, doing a little bit of work for you on the side on nights and weekends and stuff like that. And then COVID happened. We all know how that worked out.
Well, that's right. But then you became the power behind the throne is what actually happened over here. But anyway, keep going.
Yeah. So I, like many people, decided during the pandemic that what I was doing was just kind of no longer, not GowerCrowd, but what I was doing, working in higher education, I loved, but it was just no longer a fit for me. I wanted to work remote. I always wanted to start my own business. I wanted to travel more. 2 weeks of vacation. Well, I get more than 2 weeks, but 4 weeks of vacation wasn't enough for me. I wanted just to be able to go where I wanted, when I wanted. And so I started a travel business. And so for a while, I did a little bit of both of GowerCrowd and my business, and soon realized it was not feasible to have a foot in both worlds. So I think it was April that I resigned from GowerCrowd, and I've just been working fully on my business since then, which is keeping me more than busy.
All right. So you've got to tell, what is your business? Because I remember it was like you were doing tours, and the first one, and just be completely straight, when you left us, I think you did one trip. It was you and somebody else, maybe two people, and it's just, oh my
It was
goodness,
for.
what a struggle, whatever. But tell, what is it that you do actually?
Yeah, so I own a travel company, which is slowly expanding, but I primarily focus on group travel. So I do group trips around the world where I curate the trips myself and kind of pick the best experiences. I go out and scout and try everything out myself, and then I recruit people to come back with me, and I take them on a guided trip in different countries. So I think I did 4 or 5 countries in the first year. And yeah, my first trip was Mexico City last October. I had 4 friends on it that I will be forever grateful for. And now most of my trips are strangers, which is amazing. That's definitely the best part. I have some friends that come, but for the most part, yeah, my trips are full of strangers who travel together and they end up all being friends by the end.
How phenomenal. All right, so what countries have you been going to? Kind of rattle them off.
This year I've been to Morocco, Portugal, Turkey, Colombia, Mexico City, Canada, and England.
That's incredible.
Only two of those were new to me. For the most part, I'm doing a lot of repeat travel, unfortunately, to bring other people. But yeah, Morocco was new to me, and I went to London for the Green Bay Packer game recently. Um, so that was fun as
Well, what
well.
else would you do in England? You know.
Right, you're obviously there for NFL game.
All right, so now how many people do you take on these tours?
Usually, it's about 10 to 15. It kind of depends
Oh,
on
wow.
it depends on the trip, but I don't really desire to go to me, 15 is big. I don't really want to go any bigger than that. I like keeping them small and intimate, and I feel like the group stays together more if it's a smaller group. So I just think it's a better travel experience to have it smaller. I don't want to be carting people around on big tour buses or anything like that.
Now, I remember that when we were working together, we were talking about this side of your life that you wanted to develop this business. You were scratching your head, figuring out how to do it, I think. You looked at websites and how do you do social? I mean, you really become quite an expert in this. But tell me the journey exactly. What was the process to going from really zero, not long ago, to a thriving travel business that you have today? Go all the way back and tell me what were the challenges and how did you figure it out?
I mean, the challenges are every day still, but I think the first step, I mean, once I decided what I wanted to do and I kind of had a clear plan, I hired a business coach. And so she certainly helped me kind of get things going as far as, the logistics of starting a business and all of that. But that to me is the easy part. It's starting a business and trying to get clients when you don't have anything. I didn't have an email
Right.
list. I had a private Instagram when I started my business. I think I had 300 followers because that wasn't my thing. And now I have 3,000 in about a year and a half. So, I mean, that's not a lot of followers in like social media context, but it's 10 times what I had when I started a little bit over a year ago. So, um, yeah. And then I built a website. I will honestly say working for GowerCrowd prepared me so much more to start my own business because I did all the marketing myself. I built my own website. I do all my own social media. I do all my own photos. Like, I think I'm more capable of doing things myself than I would have been had I not worked for GowerCrowd. That is 100% for sure. And Adam, you were super supportive and helpful and gave great advice. So, I think all of that really helped me prepared to start a business. On top of, I worked at a college for 14 years. I had a team under me for a long time. So I think it's just like a culmination of experiences that had kind of prepared me to get going. But as far as what I was doing, I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I was literally just figuring it out. And I still am. I'm a year in and I'm still figuring it out.
Well, of course. I mean, if you as soon as you stop figuring it out, it's time to stop.
Yeah.
Basically, you always want to be growing and doing more. But right at the beginning, the big challenge was how do you make money doing this business, right? And actually bring this. It's all good, well and good to have 3,000 people on Instagram, but
Yeah.
you want 10 people to spend, thousands of dollars to get on a plane and fly somewhere. How did you cross that hurdle? What was the process for doing that? Just describe the first trip and then the marketing that you did, and how you found people and brought them in.
Yeah, I started, I think initially I started just on social media with like my current, friends, family. And that's how I found the first four, who were all women that I knew. My second trip was Turkey this past April. That one wasn't full either because we had a bit of another COVID spike, last year. So this was, keep in mind, I started a travel business in a pandemic. People thought I was insane. But I was looking more ahead of post-pandemic, like what are people going to want to do more than anything? That's what I wanted to do more than anything. And even people who've never traveled before, I think they realized during 2020 and beyond that, like, if I haven't started traveling yet, I need to start, because once something is taken away from you and you don't have it anymore, I think you realize what you're missing. So I guess I kind of had the foresight of starting it early so that when people were ready and felt safe again, and we had vaccines and all of that in place and countries opened up, that I would be ready to go. So that's, I think, part of the reason I had such a rough start, on top of the fact that it's just a new business. My Turkey trip, I think I had 6 people. And again, most of them were people that I knew. I think I had 2 people I hadn't met before. And then it was really like in between that Mexico City trip and that Turkey trip, I had launched another Mexico City trip for this fall. And that's really when things turned. I remember I opened up my email one day and I had a person I had never met had booked my trip, and she had never talked to me before. And I
Amazing.
was like, I cried. I was actually sitting in a bar. It might have been because I was drinking, but I was like, oh my God, like a person I don't know just booked something from me and she doesn't even know who I am. And then I would say most of the people on that trip that ended up signing up, I didn't know. It was probably a 30% people I knew, and, 70% people I didn't. I'm bad at math, but, yeah, that was kind of a shift for me of like, oh, holy crap. Like I actually can get clients or customers that aren't just my friends and family. So it made it a little bit more real for me. And then after that, I think my next trip was, I actually ended up doing a Vancouver trip with a friend this summer. That one sold out. And then my Colombia trip sold out. And so really ever since, like all of my trips have been selling out, and the majority of the people on the trip are people I don't know. So a lot of it has been, I can say there isn't one magic bullet or like one strategy that works with marketing. I'm still figuring that out, but a lot of it is word of mouth. Honestly, the more people I have that go on my trips, the more they share their experiences, the more people hear about it. I think that's really, really been the most impactful. Social media is like great. I think it just keeps me top of mind for people, but I would say the best thing I've done is just been genuine and like shared my story with people and shared my experiences. And I haven't really tried really hard to like sell. I just focus on sharing, why I think these trips are so life-changing for people, because it's not just about travel. It's not just about the destination. It's about the experiences that you're having.
So the first ones, this first lady that signed up, and then the others
Yeah.
subsequently that signed up. How did they find you? Right. So how did they come into your orbit? And
Yeah.
yeah.
I always ask people that, because I never really know. And then when they're actually, I spend like 6 to 9 months chatting with these people on email or social media or whatever. We kind of become like virtual friends while we're waiting for this trip to happen. And then they show up in person and you feel like you kind of know them. But I make a point of asking people where they found me. A lot of times it's Facebook, like they've found me on Facebook groups, or they've seen like posts with my pictures and my story. Sometimes it's on Instagram. Sometimes lately it's been podcasts. I've had a lot of people write me after they hear my story on a podcast. So it's really all over the place. Or I have people that, I had a guy book my Morocco trip and I asked him where he found me, and he's like, my sister went to college with you. And I was like, oh, okay. I have no idea. So it's like a combination of things. It's kind of coming from all over, but it's always interesting to hear where people are finding it.
And you say that they share their experiences, right? That's kind of one way that word of mouth spreads. How do they do that? Are you talking about that they chat about it on their social media channels? Do they post comments on your channels? What exactly? In what way are they sharing their experiences that's creating this kind of referral chain?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is word of mouth, just they're just, talking about the trip they just went on, and people are
Mm.
asking where they, what trip did they go on, who'd they go with, that kind of thing. That certainly is part of it. Definitely sharing on social media, like sharing, I take all my own photos and videos and then I give them to everybody at the end. And they can do whatever they want with them. I just ask that they preferably share that they like went with me. And so a lot of people will share, lots of photos of the trip and stuff like that. They share my posts sometimes. And I have my own Facebook travel group, although it's just for women. A lot of the women comment in there, if I share pictures about a trip or something, they'll comment and share their story or share their favorite part, that kind of thing.
And how important has content been? I remember we talked about this a little bit. So I was always used to go on these trips, and I'd see you on Facebook. Oh my goodness, these photographs are amazing. I think you did one in Colombia. My favorite picture was that night shot,
Oh yeah,
looking
yeah.
down on the city and all these glowing houses. I mean, it was just spectacular. And then the pictures of you doing these cool things that you do, chuckling some dogs, I think, or wherever it was, and walking upstairs. And how do you do that? Did you take a photographer? Like, what do you do exactly? How do you create that content?
So it's a combination. Anything you see that I'm not in, I'm obviously taking myself. And if it were up to me, I would take all my own photos and videos. But unfortunately, when I'm selling the idea of traveling with me, I have to be in it. So that's actually the hardest part for me.
Mm.
People are always surprised. I hate being on camera. I don't like having my picture taken. If people follow me in my stories, they'll notice my face is rarely in them. It's because I'm not a big, I just don't like being on camera. But I have made any of my friends who have traveled with you or with me will tell you that I train them well. So it's interesting because if you looked at all my photos, you probably would think I have one person taking them all, but in reality, it's all different people who've just kind of been quick trained by me. So
Mm.
I think my friends have learned quickly, like, it's like, don't crop off my head, don't crop off the top of a building. I need feet in a photo. Like, and if you only take one, I'm probably going to make you take 50 more. So um, they learn quickly. Like if you just take a lot of photos, I can probably find one that I can work with and then we can move on with our day. So a lot of it is just taking lots of shots and finding the right one. And then I edit it all so that it looks cohesive. So that's probably where it starts to look like I'm the one doing it all, but it's really different people taking them.
Now,
I was gonna say, I have had a couple professionals as well. I'm starting to hire that out as much as I can, just because it's really hard to be in everything with my groups if I'm taking it.
and so you hire people to kind of shadow you on the trips and take pictures.
Yeah, my Mexico City trip that I just did was the first one where I had a professional videographer there the whole time. So he's actually a drone videographer. So he did some photography, but primarily he did like videography of the group together and like all of the things we were doing. And then he did a lot of drone like aerial shots, which are really cool. So that I can use all of that in my promotional stuff in the future. So it's really about like showing what we're doing and showing the people. And like I said, if I'm doing it myself, then I'm not in it. So it just looks like a bunch of random people on a trip versus like people with me.
Yeah, well, that's right. And you kind of want an anchor point as well. I mean, you're selling
Yeah.
you and your skills and your guiding abilities and all
Yeah.
that. So when you say promotional stuff, what do you mean promotional stuff? What kind of promotional stuff do you have and do, and what are you planning?
Yeah, primarily right now it's a lot of, I mean, I certainly like put a lot of photos on my website. I will say, like, I think the thing that sells my trips the most is the photos and the videos.
Mm.
I have a pretty loyal following on social media that follows my stories, and because anytime I'm traveling, I show like very in-depth what we're doing. And so people like to follow along, even if they have no interest in traveling, they're just interested in seeing, what we're doing. So I certainly do a lot in my stories. It's super time consuming, but people really, really enjoy it and give a lot of positive feedback. And I think it just shows you like the behind the scenes of travel too. It's not always the pretty stuff. It's the mishaps and the things that go wrong, which is all the time for me. I do a lot of reels on Instagram, so like travel reels and things like that. So getting all that footage that I can use for reels. And then my website, showing a lot of photos. When I'm trying to sell a trip after scouting, then I'm putting out all the pictures that I've taken.
And so this is, you might call this content marketing, right? Using photography and videos. But what other kinds of content? I remember seeing this one post, I think it might have been an email, but I think it was a post where you said, here's a tip for getting free travel or
Yeah.
something like that. So talk to me about the other kinds of content you put out there just to give value to your audience so that they, establish a relationship with you that way.
Yeah, I started an email list, and again, started that from nothing. I think I was on it last night. I have 550 people on it. So it's not huge, but it's 550 people more than I had a year ago. I send out like a bi-weekly newsletter that usually has a link to my blog. I try to blog twice a month. And then I will feature like a person who's traveled with me and have them kind of tell a little story about one of their favorite trips or like their travel tips. And then I also do like a travel tip. So I kind of look at what's going on in the travel industry. This summer it was like people losing their luggage everywhere and, purchasing an air tag for your luggage, things like that. I do a lot of stuff with credit cards and flights. I think a lot of people seek me out for that. And I would say that's the number one thing people are usually looking for is how do I find a cheap flight? Or how do I fly for free? Because I generally don't pay for flights because I am very, very into the credit card hacking game.
Interesting. Okay, so people find you. Well, actually, give us a tip there. What is the credit card hack?
I mean, it's a long, in-depth thing, but I always tell people just start with one card. So the number one rule with credit cards is one, because I taught financial literacy, you need to be able to pay it off. So don't go into the points game and try to accumulate points and get free stuff if you're not going to pay off your card, because you're just negating that with the interest you're going to pay. But if you can afford what you're putting on your card, always use your card instead of a debit card because you're getting points. If you're going to dinner with your friends and you guys want to split the bill, pick up the tab and have your friends like Venmo you because you're getting all the points, things like that. And then make sure you hit the minimum spend. So whenever you open a card, it will say, there's a sign up bonus or you need to get $5,000 on this card in 3 months. So make a plan for how you can do that with your regular bills, your regular spending, not going out and shopping for $5,000. But you would be surprised at how many of your everyday expenses can go on a card and get you that sign up bonus. And then sometimes those bonuses are $500, $1,000 in free travel, which you then can use for a flight. And then once you get into this, it's like rinse, repeat. So I probably have 12 credit cards. I don't use them all actively, but I have a spreadsheet and I keep track of all of it. And like, that's a very quick and dirty version of it.
That's really cool. And then I remember vaguely we were talking about content ideas. And I vaguely remember we talked about guides, putting together kind of, here's all the why not share all the places you go? You need to keep it a secret. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Right? Here's all the, talk about the guide. Do you put together guides for people?
I'm working on that. I'm currently kind of expanding some other areas of my business. Because one thing I get asked the most is travel planning. Like people want me to plan their own individual trips, which is really hard for me to do right now as one person because I have five freelancers working for me right now doing various things. But until I like pull the trigger on a full-time employee, it's just a little bit hard for me to take on individual clients. I'll do it on a case-by-case basis. But one thing I'm working on is doing more travel planning for individual people and also selling itineraries. So if you want to go to Mexico City, but you don't want to go with my group, or maybe just the dates don't work with you or whatever, I am going to sell that trip to you so that you can follow it on your own and do your own trip however you wish. I've had a lot of like women I was just in Mexico City and I had women who were there at the same time as me following my trip. And they were like going on all the same excursions as my group and kind of doing it alongside, but separate from us. So just putting that in a format that people can follow along a little bit easier with more detail than obviously
wait
just
a minute.
my
So
website.
there were people bought your guide. Did they fly out at the same time and kind of constantly bumping into you on a day-to-day basis? Or something? What was
They
that?
didn't buy my guide because I don't have it for sale yet. I'm working on it, but they basically like used my itinerary and I've had several people who have like essentially gone on my trips on their own using the activities that I've planned. They've figured out how to do it on their own, which obviously is totally doable. You just have to put in the work. But they were there at the exact same time because it was Day of the Dead in Mexico City. There's only one Day of the Dead. So people are starting to go at the same time as me using my itinerary, but not going on the trip.
So describe I mean, it's silly to say, but describe a trip. What goes into planning one of these trips, and what are all the different components that you put together? Like, can open up the kimono and tell us what does it look like behind the scenes?
It's a lot. I don't do my trips probably the same way as other people do. I make things hard for myself because I'm slightly perfectionist, but first thing I do is I go on the trip myself. So like right now I'm looking at Peru and then I'm going to Cuba in March. And so I don't know if you remember this, but I was going to Cuba in March of 2020 and I had to turn around. So that trip's already planned. But basically the first thing I do is like Peru. Okay, what do I want to do in Peru? What do I think would be cool? We're going to hike the Inca Trail. We're going to go to Machu Picchu. Like, what are the best things to do? And then I go on that trip and go through all of the different activities that I would want to do with a group and make sure that they're things that a group would want to do. I meet a guide. I usually like interview several of them, figure out which one I want to work with. And then I come home and then that's when the real work starts. That's when I put together the trip. So I have a guide in each country that I work with. And then it's just a lot of back and forth communication on WhatsApp. And on any given day, I'm working with somebody in Cuba, Morocco, Colombia, and we're messaging back and forth, putting together this trip and finalizing all the details. That's the hardest part, is like just putting together the trip, because there's just so many things that go into, you can imagine planning your own vacation. And now I'm doing it for 10 to 15 people. Then it's like getting all the marketing set up, putting it out on my website, getting my booking site set up, getting all the photos and videos and all the content together, and just figuring out how I'm going to promote it. And then the trip starts selling, and then I'm communicating with people, answering all their questions along the way. And leading up to the trip, about a month before, I do an orientation with them. So then as the trip gets closer, I pull the group together virtually and have them start talking to each other. We start a WhatsApp chat. They get to meet each other on a Zoom call before they go. And then I start answering all of those questions that people have leading up to travel. Like, what should I pack? What should I wear? What can I do with money? Like, how do I exchange my currency? Do I need an electrical converter? Do I need a visa? All those questions that people have about travel that they're nervous about. I answer all of those specific to that country. And then we go on the trip. And then the trip itself is, they arrive and we pick them up from the airport. I arrange their transportation, and then we meet at a hotel. We do like a welcome dinner. Everyone gets to know each other. We have drinks. And then from there, it's pretty planned out. I would say like 60 to 70% planned out every day. There's an activity every single day. And then sometimes I build in free time for them to go explore on their own. But every day they're doing something that most of them say they never would have thought of on their own. They're like, I could have came to Mexico City, but I wouldn't have done half of this stuff or taken the time to figure out how to do it, that type of thing. So generally when people come home, they say they did things that they wouldn't have done on their own. I think that's the ultimate goal.
What are some of the coolest things then that people say, "Oh my goodness, I'm so glad we did that. I would never have even known to look for it."
Yeah, I think the most exciting ones are the like adventure type activities that we do, or like the physically challenging ones. I think those are like when you're traveling and you force yourself to do something you maybe normally wouldn't do. There's like a, an emotional and psychological component to that too. So like I'm afraid of heights. I've always been afraid of heights. I've been on 5 hot air balloons in the last 2 years. I went paragliding in Colombia. I've gone ATVing. I've ridden camels. Like I've gotten over a lot of fears by just kind of forcing myself to do it. And I know a lot of people come on my trips and they say they're afraid of heights. And then they go on a hot air balloon ride and they're like, I'm so glad I didn't skip that. Cause sometimes, people think about skipping it or they get afraid or they're like, maybe I shouldn't go. And then they go and they're like, oh God, I'm so glad I didn't skip out on that. Cause that was like the best part of the trip. Those activities. And then the ones where you're meeting the locals, I think, in Turkey, I like prepared a meal with a Turkish family in their home. I know in Morocco, we're going to be going to a school and giving out gifts to the kids. So
Wow.
I'm starting to, now that I'm a little bit more established and I'm starting to give back more with my trips. So when people pay for a trip, I'm taking a percentage of the money people are giving me. And then we're having some type of activity where they get to interact with locals and give them something. I know in Cuba, we're going to be giving out gifts as well. So that's just always something that I've wanted to do in my own travel. And so now that I have the means to do it on a bigger scale, it's very rewarding for people.
Ah, that's really cool. Now, before you accept somebody who signs up, do you interview? Like, what's the like, you just make? Yeah, I can see you laughing. So you know exactly where I'm going with that. How do you
Yep.
deal with kind of screening people?
I'm starting to. I've learned the hard way. When you start a business, you want to just kind of take any customers in business you can get.
Hmm.
But that, especially when you're traveling with somebody for 10 days, you can't really do this. Isn't like I'm selling a t-shirt to somebody. Like
Right.
you don't care who wears the t-shirt necessarily, but
Hmm.
when you're bringing together a bunch of strangers who are committing to go on a vacation together for 10 days, you want to make sure that they're having the best experience and that obviously not everyone's going to be best friends, but you want to make sure you don't have any problems. And just that everyone's a fit, so I have a salesperson now who she hops on calls with people as much as possible, to kind of answer all their questions, because generally people have questions, they want to talk to a person. I just don't always have capacity to do that, but also just to talk to people and just make sure that it's a fit both for me and my company, but also for the people going on the trips. Because you don't want somebody, I always use Peru as an example because I'm going to be going there. Like I can't have somebody on the Inca Trail that can't hike for 2 days because we can't leave them behind, but we're going to have to. So I need to make sure that people understand what they're signing up for, what the physical requirements are, that they understand that this is structured, that you have to be on time. Like there's certain things with a group trip that you have to do that maybe you don't do on your own vacation necessarily. So just making sure that everybody up front understands like what they're signing up for is kind of the biggest thing.
Now, when you started I think your idea was just to take women, right? And then you started thinking about a co-ed trips. Like, how has that evolved?
I always wanted to be co-ed.
Mm.
I just didn't know initially, like, should this be all women? Should this just be co-ed? And mainly because like I feel like a lot of women do just want to travel with other women. But I've done both and I like both. I think going forward as I expand, like I will have targeted trips for different populations. If I do like 2 Morocco trips side by side, maybe group 1 is women only and group 2 is co-ed. Because that gives
Oh,
people the option. Because I personally I'm single, like I like traveling with men. I think it's fun. I think it brings a different dynamic. My Mexico City trip, I have 2 people dating now from across the world. They met on that trip. So I mean, there's that component of it too. But then there's also women that are married, their husbands don't want to travel, but they're, I hate to say the word allowing them to travel, you know what I mean? They're okay with them traveling, but they maybe wouldn't be super comfortable with them going on a trip with a bunch of guys. So there's some women that just want to go on a trip with other women. So right now I cater to both. I've done like my Vancouver trip was women only. I'm probably going to be doing an Arizona retreat that will be women only, but then most of my other trips currently are co-ed.
And how do you determine what to charge?
So I basically just have like a certain percentage of a markup that I add onto the trip that accounts for like my time. I know some people like they'll look at a price and be like, oh, well, why would I be paying that much when I can do it myself? That's kind of like the most common, comment I get about price. And it's like, my comment to that is you can do anything yourself for cheaper for the most part, Of course, time is money and there's all of that. But like, I always say like, you could make your own clothes if you wanted to, but you don't do you? No, you go buy it from a store. Like you could go grocery shopping, but instead you buy HelloFresh. It's convenience. So it's convenience and it's skill. You're paying for not only the convenience of me doing it for you and you just showing up, but also my expertise in that you're not going to probably have anything on this trip that you really don't like because it's already been vetted. And I think like, for me, travel is stressful. Like a lot of things can go wrong. It's hard to prepare for, you just all that time you spend just putting into planning a trip is stressful. But then when you go on a trip, like there's so many decisions that have to be made. How do I get there? How do I get around? Where do we eat tonight? At some point it becomes like decision fatigue. And, you're kind of like, I'm sick of like trying to figure this out. I just want to like go do something. So on my trips, it's all done for you. You just get to literally show up. Like I tell people, you have to get your own flight. I help you figure that out if you need help. You have to pack your own bags. I give you a list of what to pack. And then you just need to get yourself there. And then from there on out, like I'm just taking care of it so that you can literally just enjoy your vacation because that's what vacation is supposed to be.
Yeah, that's right. Because these are all pretty much all inclusive, other than get there, right? You get your flight, but once you land, most of everything, hotels, guides, tours, food, everything's included. It's like a one all-inclusive price. Is that right, Laura?
For the most part, like usually some dinners aren't included, and that's only because I want people to explore. And, a lot of people want that freedom of, free time. So I'm not going to be like, hey, you get free time, but you need to be back here at 7 p.m. for dinner. That kind of like diffuses the person. So I'm a very spontaneous travel, even though I'm a travel planner and I believe in like spontaneity. And so I want people to get out and explore and do things that are off the itinerary. So that's why I don't include absolutely everything. But as far as your accommodations, transportation, the guide, like all the really important things, that's all taken care of and included.
Yeah, I remember saying to Laura, you have to do like a family thing, because what happens with us, we book our trips and then we land there and spend all of our time scratching our heads trying to figure out, all right, what we're going to do with the kids, right? Where are we going to go? We get there and then we start researching it, and it's always last minute and it's kind of half baked and it's a pain. It's a lot of work and it's never quite, I mean, it's always good, we have a good time, but it's just exhausting at the end of the day. It's never usually quite.
And then you're wasting your time in another country reading TripAdvisor or searching for, and how do I get there? And like, I used to do that, or I get home and I'm like, holy crap, I totally missed that. I didn't even know that that was there.
That's right. What should we do this afternoon? Quick, let's have a look. Is there any, it's always difficult, but all right. So I'll tell you what, let me ask you some, I can't believe how fast this has gone. Let's look at the time. Oh my goodness. Let me ask you 3 sign-off questions. Of all people, you kind of went through having to listen and read absolutely everything that I've produced when we were working together. So my patterns. I have 3 sign-off questions. Let me ask you 3 final rapid-fire questions, and then we'll wrap up. First of all, what habits do you have? Daily habits that I would say, what daily habits have you developed that help you be successful and productive?
It's a really good question, and I did not anticipate this, even though I should. Um, I would say like prioritizing is huge. I have, if I could make a to-do list, it's like 100 items long, and that is so incredibly overwhelming. And I get off task. So I've tried to focus on like what actually needs to be done today. Like what are my top three? Like what can I not go to bed tonight feeling, good about unless I have these three things done. So focusing on like really your top priorities, and also like focusing on the things that are going to move the needle the most, because I can get caught in the weeds of a lot of things that are fun or enjoyable, but probably don't, like in the big scheme right now, matter. So just really about like prioritizing and like staying on task is huge for me.
Mm. And since you made the break to full independence and entrepreneurship, what's been the hardest lesson you've learned?
Oh God, there's so many. Oh gosh, hardest lesson.
Mm.
Honestly, there's like if you ever want to like learn some major life lessons, become an entrepreneur, I'll say that. But um I can't do everything myself is probably the hardest. When I started this business, I 100% genuinely believed this was going to be a one person business, and it
Mm.
was going to be very simple and I could just do it all. And like I'm a year in, and like I said, I have like 5 freelancers working for me already, and that wasn't my goal. I didn't want employees anymore. I had employees for a really long time, and I was like, I just want to just do my work. But
Mm.
it's just not possible to do it all yourself, nor is it smart to do it all yourself. I've learned really quickly I need to figure out what the business can't like function on without me, like what part of it I need to be part of, versus like my finances I don't need to be part of, and what parts like keep me going and light me up and I'm like really really strong at. Like those are the things I need to do. The rest of it needs to be farmed out. Like I need to hire out pretty much the rest of it for other people to do.
Oh, that's very interesting. All right, last question. What advice would you give to somebody who was sitting in your shoes, 3 years ago, working in a job that, paid the rent and was secure and safe, but is, unhappy and wants to do more with their life? What advice would you give somebody like you 3 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, in short, like do it. Um, Life is so short, and it's so insanely terrifying to give up security and all of that. But once you make that switch, like you can never go back. Like my mind doesn't work the same way it worked a year and a half ago. I
Mm.
could never work for somebody else anymore. Because it's just a totally different, like you just realize how our society is so, we're so trained to work for other people and have a 9 to 5 and all of these things. And that's great for a lot of people, but for a lot of people it isn't. And so if you're thinking about starting a business, obviously come up with a plan. Don't just like, I'm not saying go quit your job, but come up with a plan and go for it. Cause like the worst thing that's going to happen, what I had to tell myself was the worst thing that's going to happen is I'm going to have to go work for somebody else again. Like I'm gonna have to go get another job, and I'm employable and I could do that if I need to.
Mm.
But the other worst thing that could happen is I'm going to like be 60 and be super unhappy that I never took the chance of doing what I wanted to actually do. And I think you just like don't realize your potential until you challenge yourself a little bit.
Well, the other thing that you did that was really cool, it wasn't like you suddenly had a moment of dissatisfaction and said, "Hey, I quit," and then left the office and went home and thought, "Oh, now what am I going to do?" There was a transitional period, wasn't there, for you, where you
Yeah.
were experimenting and testing, and
Yeah.
that gave you the confidence to make the leap in the end?
Yeah, I worked for you on the side while I did my other job. And then when I started doing, obviously then at some point I had a business and I had a side gig and I had my full-time job and I was like, this doesn't work. Um, and like I said, luckily you were very supportive about, helping me make that transition. And so I knew, like, worst case, I had GowerCrowd to work for if things weren't working out. But yeah, it was a little by little, like I started the business and I was like, okay, this could work. But I can't do everything. So something has to give. And I knew if I kept working for somebody else, like I was just never going to like go all in on my business. So having that side gig, and having that plan was really important to me to give me the confidence. But you're never going to be ready. I I was terrified. I sat there literally in my office with my finger over the send button when I submitted my resignation for an hour. And I had
Oh.
like my former boss from years ago, she was just like, just do it. Like, and then I think I went home and like drank a bottle of wine. Like it was not, you're never going to be like ready. That's never going to be like a decision you're going to feel 100% confident. You kind of have to just take the leap of faith.
Yeah, I remember that time. Well, I think you are absolutely, utterly inspirational, Laura.
Oh, thanks, Adam.
For people that are listening to the podcast, what is the best place to find you? What's the website address, and where would you like people to send folk to learn more?
Yeah, my website is my name. So it's lauraerickson.com. I always tell people on a podcast, though, it's Laura Erickson with no K, Ericson. Otherwise, you're going to get some like Audubon bird photographer. And that's not me. I do love birds, but that's not me. So lauraerickson.com. Otherwise, on Instagram, I'm Lola Whiskey. And then Facebook, it's just under my name, Laura Erickson.
Wonderful. Well, Laura Erickson, it was an enormous pleasure to get to know you.
Yeah.
When we met the first time, you were the consummate professional. And I just have been blown away watching your business develop on Facebook. I'm totally impressed. You make me wonder, it's kind of making me think maybe, oh God, travel, wouldn't that be nice? I never travel anywhere other than to the office. It's a real pleasure to see you. Congratulations on everything. Have a wonderful, wonderful 2023. And thanks for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. I appreciate it.
That was Laura Erickson, global jet setter of Laura Erickson with justac.com. To find out more about Laura, go to the podcast page at GowerCrowd.com. And of course, be sure to sign up for our free weekly newsletter. Laura, such an enormous pleasure seeing you again, and really fabulous to see you doing so well and so happy and so motivated and so successful. Really warms the heart. Thanks so much for joining me and sharing your story. And happy holidays to you too, dear listeners. Wishing you all the very best for a healthy and happy 2023. That is all for today. That is all for 2022. Be well, stay safe, and for now, this is Adam Gower signing off.